This week's parsha is the most important parsha in the entire Torah. You may ask, why is this week's parsha the most important in the entire Torah? Well, let me tell you. Parashah Tavo has blessings and curses. We have the laws of the first fruits and of tithes. We have new commitments and the renewing of old ones. We have Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, and the Levites speaking to the people on both. But none of that is why this is the most important parsha in the Torah. The reason this is the most important parsha is because it brings the Torah full circle. Chapter 27 describes one of the more grandiose scenes in the entire Torah. It shall be on the day that you cross the Jordan to the land that Hashem your God gives you. You shall set up great stones, and you shall cover them with plaster. You shall inscribe on them all the words of this Torah. It then goes on to describe an amazing scene where half the nation stands on one mountain and the other half on a second mountain across a valley from each other. Blessings and curses, words of Torah are read out for all to hear, and everyone answers Amen. The scene should be familiar to us. Two stones containing the words of Torah being called out for all to hear from atop a mountain. Our minds should instantly go back to Sinai and the giving of the tablets of the Ten Commandments. We've said several times in the past few weeks that the book of Devarim is also called the Mishnah Torah, the repetition of the Torah. But here, it's not so much a repetition as it is a re-experiencing. Moshe didn't retell the narrative of the giving of the Ten Commandments. He did that earlier in Devarim. Moshe commands the people to almost reenact it. But why? Everywhere else it seems enough for Moshe to remind the people about what happened before. But here, Moshe directs the people to reenact it. Not a direct reenactment, but something similar, clearly reminiscent of the experience at Sinai, but different. And why tell the people to do it after they cross the Jordan? Why not right now? What is it that Moshe is trying to convey? Let's remember who Moshe is talking to. This is not the generation who experienced with Sinai. This is the next generation. True, some of this generation were present at Sinai as children, but most of those standing before Moshe in this week's parsha were not physically at Sinai. Or if they were too small to have really participated. And while the generation at Sinai accepted the Torah as binding for all future generations, there could be a few flaws in that acceptance. At Sinai, the people famously said, Naseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear, accepting the Torah sight unseen. But is that really a binding way to enter into an eternal agreement? Could a skilled lawyer not argue that agreeing to something before anyone is told what's in it isn't valid? And even more, when the people stood at Sinai and in the years that followed, they were completely dependent on Hashem for their day-to-day existence. Hashem took them out of Egypt, fed them manna every day, clothed them, protected them, fought wars for them. In a situation like that, can you really say that the people freely accepted Torah upon themselves and their descendants for all time? You could argue that the people had no choice but to accept anything Hashem asked of them. But once the people cross the Jordan, the manna would stop. They would have to farm. They would have to fight their own battles. Of course, Hashem would be behind all of their successes, but not in the same visible, direct way as at Sinai. The generation that crosses the Jordan, they know what the Torah entails. Moshe just spent 30 days telling them. They're not under the direct control of Hashem. They can enter into an agreement of freely. On the day that they crossed the Jordan to the land that Hashem gave them, the people were able to revalidate their acceptance of Torah in a way that wasn't possible before. Moshe directs them to recreate a Sinai-like experience so that the people can publicly demonstrate their free and eternal acceptance of Torah. The end of the parsha confirms this. These are the words of the covenant that Hashem commanded Moshe to seal with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant that he sealed with them at Horeb. Horeb, Sinai, and this week's parsha are bookends. Two sides of the same coin, two aspects of our accepting of Torah, two experiences that seal our commitment. But unlike Sinai, where we heard the words of Torah directly from Hashem, when we cross the Jordan and reenact a version of that experience, it's not Hashem who communicates the words. We're told to speak the words to one another. Keeping Torah isn't only a covenant between the Jewish people and Hashem, it's a covenant between the Jewish people themselves. The parashah closes with the words, "You shall observe the words of this covenant, and you shall perform them, so that you will succeed in all that you do." You shall observe, you shall perform, you shall succeed. The entire experience is directed at both you in the singular and the plural, each one of us individually, but also as a collective, the entirety of the Jewish people. You can't separate the singular you from the collective you. We are all one. We're all responsible for one another. We are responsible for helping one another obtain the blessings laid out in the parashah. We're responsible for helping one another avoid those curses. And if we do that, we, as a people, will succeed in all that we do. That is one reason why this is the most important parashah in the entire Torah. But the other reason is that the most important piece of Torah is whatever piece of Torah you have in front of you right now. Shabbat Shalom and Am Yisroel Chai.